There's a lot in chapter 6.4, so we've broken it down to 3 different parts. Now we're going to do fractions into percents. Fraction into percent. Now there are 2 methods of doing this. So I'm going to show you both methods. You can choose which one you like to use. So I just drew a line going down the center of the page. And I'll show one method on this side and one method on this side. And that's just the letter or. the word or. Now on the left side, the method I'm going to use is taking a fraction, change it into a decimal, and then change it into a percent. So we'll just do 2 examples of this type. Here's my first one, 3/8. So I'm starting off with a fraction. I'm going to change it to a decimal. To do that, I'm going to have to divide. So remember, it's always the top number that goes into the box. Bottom number's on the outside. And then here's the decimal right there. It's always to the right of the number. And then bring it straight up. So 8 does not go into 3. You can put a 0 there or not. Then I'm going to add a 0. 8 does go into 30 twice. That's 16. 30 minus 16 is... I just made a mistake, didn't I? It goes in 3 times. Sorry, I wasn't thinking. So 8 times 3 is 24. My bad. I was correct, but it does go in more than twice. So 24, and that leaves us with 6 left over. Okay, so I'm going to add another 0, bring it straight down. 8 goes into 60. Let's see, 8 times 8 is 64, so 8 times 7, and that's 56. And so that leaves me with 4, right? 60 minus 56 is 4. Add another 0, bring it all the way down. And 8 goes into 40 5 times evenly. Okay, so the answer, so it's 0.37. I changed my fraction into a decimal. And that's what I do. Change a fraction into a decimal and then in a percent. How do you make a decimal to percent? You move the decimal point over 2 spaces. Let's see, to the right, right? D to P is to the right. So I go over 2 spaces. My answer is 37. See, I move over 1, 2, 37.5%. Now, whenever you are given a test back or a quiz back, and let's say you got 3 out of 8, what percentage is that? You would go ahead and divide, and then move the decimal over 2 spaces. So that person would get 37%, 37.5%. One more example. Here's a fraction. I want to make it to a percent. So first, I need to divide to make it to a decimal. Top number goes in the box. This number on the outside. There's the decimal. Bring it straight up. 5 does not go into 3. I add a 0. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. So it's 0.6. Now I change 0.6 into a percent. So I move it over 1, 2 spaces. So that means it is 60, right? Move it over 1, 2 spaces, add a 0, 60%. So I add a fraction, I divide it to make it to decimal, and then move the decimal over 2 spaces. Now it's a percent. Now sometimes this method is easy, depends on the problem, other times it's not. Here's another way we'll do the same problem to the right. And basically we're going to use a proportion. We're going to say the fraction equals percent over 100. This is how we're going to set the problem up. Fraction equals percent over 100. Now sometimes it's an easier way, other times it's not. So I'm going to use the same problem as before, 3/8. So the fraction equals percent over 100. The fraction equals percent over 100. Whatever this number is, that's our percent. So what we have is a proportion. And so do you remember how do we set up a proportion? We say x equals, and we have our three numbers. Which number is going to go on the bottom? The one diagonal. So that would be 8. And the other two go on top. Okay, so now we just say, well, let's see, what goes into 8 and 100? I know 2 does. How about 4? 4 goes into 8 twice. 4 goes into 100, 25. So 2 doesn't go in anything else. So now what I have is 3 times 25, that's 75, divided by 2. So half of 75. Half of 75 is my percent. And it turns out that half of 75 is 37.5. And we did that already over here. Okay, right over here, 37.5. If you take half of 7.5, it's 37.5. And just to prove it to you, I divided 2 into 75, and I get 37.5. Okay, let's do the other one, 3/5. 3/5. So it equals some number over 100. This would be our percent. So setting this up, let's see, the number that goes on the bottom, so one diagonal of x, that's 5. And the other two go on top. And we know that 5 will go into 100. 5 goes in there once, 5 goes in 100 20 times, and 3 times 20 is 60. The answer is 60%. So that's another method of doing this. Sometimes it's faster, and sometimes it's not. So again, you can choose which method you'd like to use.